And we continue at 1:06 in the afternoon on the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wangs in Culver City.
John, a lot of people weighing in on Katie Porter's interview in Bakersfield. Kevin writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. Can't wait for Katie Porter to campaign in the Central Valley in the dead of summer. She'll go everywhere declaring that it's hotter than a boiling pot of potatoes.
Paul!
800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It is our pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is the United States Attorney for the Central District of California, which includes Los Angeles. He's a former member of the California State Assembly representing Riverside County. You can follow him on X at Bill Essayli. U.S. Attorney Bill Essayli, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be back.
Well, thank you so much for coming back. Let's start out by talking about what was going on the streets of Los Angeles and Commerce, where you had people who were throwing objects at police officers, both local, state, and federal. You had people who were looting. You had people who were lighting cars on fire. You had people trapping police officers underneath freeway overpasses. Their laws were being broken right and left. We saw it happen on live television. And we know that there is an impulse, at least at the local level, with left-wing politicians to not prosecute these things because, well, after all, these were peaceful protests, and we don't want to say that they were anything other than peaceful. And if we run around prosecuting people, then we're acknowledging they weren't peaceful. So we're just going to try to move the crowds from over here to over there, and we're not going to aggressively go after anyone. You went on television as all of this was happening, and you took the opposite path, where you said, listen, here's the deal. If you break the law, especially if you assault a federal police officer, a federal employee, we're going to find you, we're going to come after you, and we're going to prosecute you. And you're following through with that.
Yeah, absolutely. We've already filed more than half a dozen charges already against these rioters. They're not protesters. There's a difference between protesting and rioting. And what we've seen over the last few weeks is really an escalation of tactics by the radical left to resist federal law enforcement operations in Los Angeles. There is a notion, there is a condition here that people really believe that California or LA is a sanctuary from federal immigration laws. I assure you it's not. And what we have happening right now are federal agents, we have hundreds of them, out conducting lawful Title VIII law enforcement operations. They're going out and they're enforcing our immigration laws, which they have the lawful authority to do. And what you have are politicians who are sort of giving their tacit approval for the public, these rioters, to resist, oppose, attack, dox, interfere, obstruct our agents, and we are not going to tolerate it. We're not going to tolerate it, especially in the people that lectured us about insurrection for the last 4 years. So our office is prepared to charge, arrest, and imprison all of these people that get involved, and that's what's going on right now.
When you're in court, you're prosecuting someone, you're appearing before a judge, you have to deal with facts. That's what goes on in courts, and then the jury determines whether or not the facts prove that the person is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. When all of this was going on, we saw the images of the Waymos on fire, the LAPD cruisers on fire, the buildings being tagged in one box, and then we'd have a politician, whether it be Congresswoman Judy Chu or Congresswoman Maxine Waters or others, saying, oh, no, there's no violence. Everything is peaceful. If someone says there's violence that's going on, they're telling you something that's not true. The LAPD has a handle on it. They're fine. They're not overwhelmed as the cars are burning right directly to their right. What do you make of their credibility when they go on TV and say those things as the visuals are disproving their claims in real time?
Well, I think they have no credibility or authority on the matter. I mean, luckily people have eyes and ears. And so when the governor or the mayor says there's no problem, LA is under control, all you have to do is turn on the local TV or go on social media, and you could see the looting, the burning, the violence, the rock throwing, You just name it. It's anything but in control. It's totally out of control. And if that's their definition of what an in-control city looks like, then they have no business in being political leaders in a civilized society. So, no, look, this is all just political theater. They are upset that the president called in the National Guard, which we're very grateful he did. He did it to protect our buildings, our courthouses, our personnel who are being attacked. What the National Guard has done is it's kept the peace, and it's allowed us to continue our mission, which is to enforce the immigration law. And I'm proud to say we've been undeterred in that effort. We are continuing to arrest hundreds of illegal immigrants a day, and it's not going to stop no matter what they do. All they're doing is creating new charges for people that would not have, weren't going to be part of the criminal justice system. They're now being oriented with the federal criminal justice system. So, like I said, we've already charged over 24 individuals. We have video evidence of other people involved in these activities. There's a lot of stuff on social media. The FBI is collecting it. We're working to identify people. We've got other bigger investigations looking into the funding, the organizing, the support of these riots. And we're also looking at some elected officials who we think are condoning or encouraging this behavior. So there's a lot going on here. This is not going to be over anytime soon. But what I can assure you is what we're doing is not going to stop.
And to that point, if individuals are seeing someone get arrested by ICE, by federal law enforcement officials, and they decide, you know what, my local assemblyman said I need to resist, or my local member of Congress said that I need to fight back, and they go and they start attacking a federal police officer, trying to prevent them from making a lawful arrest, it's not like you're going to go in front of George Gascon anymore, or even Nathan Hochman. You're going to be brought up on federal charges. And if you get convicted in a federal court, it's not like going to prison in California where you serve a fraction of your sentence and you're out and everything's fine. When you go to federal prison, you're sentenced by a federal judge to go to federal prison. That's time you actually serve, isn't it?
Yeah, this is not state court. This is federal court. So, no, we have federal judges. We have the grand jury. And when you get sentenced to prison on the federal system, you're doing 80% of that time. This isn't the good time, half-time credits business that they've got on the state system. This is real time. And these federal judges don't mess around either with the law. So, look, a lot of people are taking risks that I don't know that they fully appreciate what they're doing. And these politicians are setting a lot of people up for failure to have a criminal conviction and to do time in jail. It's not good. And by the way, let's just deal with this right now. This narrative that there's mass people going around kidnapping people, this is not factual. You have federal sworn law enforcement special agents who are out conducting criminal investigations and conducting arrests. They have the authority to do that. And the reason their face is covered is because you have these leftists who are taking pictures of them and doxing them and showing up to their homes and their hotels to intimidate and harass them. And they don't have to put up with that. So rather than introducing bills to unmask our agents, why don't they do a bill to unmask the rioters in the street who are concealing their face while they're committing numerous felonies? I don't hear any politician doing that. So they have their priorities all wrong up there in the legislature. And I know that firsthand.
Well, that's basically how this started, isn't it? Where you had a Democratic member of the Assembly who was posting on social media about federal law enforcement officials who use a building near a Home Depot. They were preparing for some kind of action that had nothing to do with the Home Depot. And that Democratic member of the legislature posted a video saying that they were raiding a Home Depot, which wasn't true. And that's what was the first domino with what happened with the rioting.
Well, that and the day before when we were executing a search warrant in the Garment District on a business that a judge had ordered us to do a search for, that's really what started it. You had the labor unions come out and start resisting it. They surrounded our agents. They needed the help of LAPD to actually get extracted from that facility. It was very dangerous. So it started on Friday and it escalated on Saturday. And then once the president saw that, he said, that's it. He's calling in the National Guard. The state of California, the city of LA is unable to do their job. They cannot ensure basic public safety. And that's why the president called in the National Guard. And we were very grateful he did that. And I don't think they're leaving anytime soon, no matter how much they don't like it.
We're speaking with U.S. Attorney Bill Essayli from the Central District of California. Over the weekend, the Dodgers put out a tweet saying that they would not allow ICE agents at Dodger Stadium. ICE responded back on social media saying, "We're not conducting any raids at Dodger Stadium. That's not true." What happened over at Chavez Ravine this weekend?
My understanding is it's sort of the same thing that happened with that Home Depot incident in Paramount. They were staging adjacent to the Dodger Stadium. Look, these officers, these agents in the morning, they group up, they make assignments, they make teams, and then they go and do their operations. And so they often meet somewhere where there's a big parking lot or wherever to get set up for the day. It's very common. A lot of law enforcement agencies do this. They call it mustering. So that's what was happening. There was nothing going on at the Dodger Stadium. I don't think anyone was in the Dodger Stadium at this time. They weren't trying to get into the Dodger Stadium. But this is the hysteria that the politicians and the media is stirring up, that every time they see a federal officer, and frankly, I think local police are getting caught up in this now. They're being confused for federal agents and getting attacked as well. That it's open season. It's somehow okay for the public to show up and force and resist federal agents. It is not. And like I said, a lot of these people are going to end up in jail, and it's not good for them, and it's not good for anyone else. So this has to end, and we'll see what happens.
LA County Supervisor Catherine Barger went on Fox 11 with Alex Michelson and called on the County of Los Angeles, the state of California, to end the sanctuary state policy and the sanctuary county policy and cooperate with ICE, particularly at the county jails and the state prisons. She said, obviously, which is true, that the federal government doesn't have unlimited resources. You have limited manpower. You have a limited number of hours in the day. And if the state would cooperate in turning over individuals that you would put detainers on who are incarcerated in some capacity or another, that we would end up deporting the worst of the worst. And certainly there wouldn't be wider nets cast out in the community, and this would be something that all of us would benefit from. What do you make of what Supervisor Barger had to say, and do you think there's any hope at all of that happening at some point in the future?
No, she's absolutely right, and I was on record saying the same thing last week. Our preference, the federal government, we would like to focus our resources and target criminal illegal aliens. That's our focus. The best way to do that is to work with local law enforcement. It'd be to work with the jails, to screen people for their immigration status when they're arrested. For example, in Florida and Texas, local police officers are trained and certified. So if they pull someone over, if they are conducting a criminal investigation, like let's say a burglary or shoplifting, and they're able to determine that person's immigration status, you know what? They may not be able to, they might say, look, a shoplifting charge isn't going to carry a lot of weight, but let's go ahead and get this person deported. They do stuff like that all the time in other states, and we're unable to do that here in California to focus on the bad actors. So what you're seeing is our agents have to go out into the community after they're released, where we have to go look for the bad guys. And what the president has said is if we encounter illegal aliens out in the community, it doesn't matter what their criminal history record is, deported as well. We cannot ignore the law. We do not have that luxury. If you don't like the law, you got to change the law. You got to go talk to Congress. But right now, this is the state of the law. The state of California has made it impossible for us to work with them, to limit our resources to just focusing on the criminal aliens. So we're out doing enforcements in the community. That's the decision of the state of California. I hope they would reverse SB 54. I don't think they will. So if you don't like what you're seeing on the streets, call your legislators. This is their fault.
What do you make of the taunting? Because Gavin Newsom is saying, come arrest me, come arrest me. Alex Padilla, you were at that press conference where he was a drama queen and was trying to get arrested and end up on the nightly news, and then Iran got him booted from all of his cable news bookings and Sunday morning show bookings. Maxine Waters, I don't know if you saw the video of that, but she was calling on the ICE agents to shoot her. She said, if you're going to shoot anyone, shoot me, but don't miss. And, I mean, was really just giving them an earful. Like she bought a ticket in the cheap seats at right field at Dodger Stadium, and she was going after the other team's right fielder. What do you make of that sort of schoolhouse bullying?
Yeah, it's a bizarre, to say the least. I mean, what Senator Padilla did was really bizarre, and like I said, we didn't even know he was there. We didn't expect him to be there. By the time they realized he was a U.S. senator, he was uncuffed and released. So, I mean, the whole thing was just felt like a political stunt. But look, I think what the left does is they project. And they are trying to do or make it look like we're doing to them what they did to us for the last 4 years. They're the ones who politically persecuted their opponents. They're the ones who indicted and criminally prosecuted President Trump. They went after Republicans who were simply protesting on January 6th, who did not commit any violence or acts of aggression. They did all that. So now they're trying to act like they're being politically oppressed or victimized, and it's just not true. And so we didn't charge Senator Padilla. Maxine Waters was not arrested or anything like that. But I think they want to be, because they want to be martyrs. And they want to have that narrative that the president is going after his political opponents. And it's not true. In fact, at the DOJ, one of our first directives was to de-weaponize the department. We do not target people. We do not look at people and say, let's get them and find a crime. We follow the law and the evidence where it takes us. That's how we do our job. That's the way it's supposed to be. So, yeah, they want to be martyrs. They want to fundraise. We're not going to play into that here at the Department of Justice.
One last question. I know that Alex Padilla keeps saying, well, I was a U.S. Senator. I was a U.S. Senator, so it doesn't matter if I charge the podium. Does your occupation actually matter in a circumstance like that? And I say that because Dan White, who murdered Harvey Milk and former San Francisco Mayor George Moscone, was an elected member of the Board of Supervisors. We saw 2 elected officials in the state of Minnesota assassinated by an appointed member to a board or commission by not one but 2 different governors. And there was a county official over in Clark County, Nevada, Robert Tellis, who was found guilty of first-degree murder in the stabbing death of a Las Vegas Review journalist, investigative reporter who was investigating him. Just because you're an elected official doesn't mean you don't have a screw loose or you can't lose your sanity or you're cool too.
What I heard was no one's above the law, and that includes U.S. senators. So, no, there is no special status or exemptions from the law because you're a U.S. senator. Now, there might be some deference or decorum or customs that they traditionally enjoy. And by the way, what gets left out of this story is even after that whole incident with Senator Padilla, Secretary Noem took the time to meet with him. She spent 15 to 20 minutes after that in a private office, one-on-one, talking about immigration and his concerns. And he doesn't say that. So if this was truly about asking the secretary questions or making sure that his viewpoint is heard, he was able to do that, and that is the deference he gets as a senator. He does have access to these appointed officials, and so that just makes you question, what was it really about? And so only he can answer that, what his true motive was. But he was afforded the respect that he got as a senator, and he got a one-on-one meeting with her, even despite that behavior.
U.S. Attorney Bill Essayli, U.S. Attorney for the Central District of California. You can follow him on X at Bill Essayli. U.S. Attorney Essayli, thank you so much for stopping by.
Great. Thanks so much for having me.
One of the questions I get all the time is, why is it that you want to fix California? It is a lost cause. The people that run the state are crazy. The people who vote them into office are even crazier. And neither one of those 2 things look like they're going to change anytime soon. It's so much easier to just pack up your stuff and move to a different place. And a lot of people have done that. Based on the population patterns that we've seen, we know which states are growing and we know which states are in population decline, and California is one of them. People are leaving California. They're going to Arizona. They're going to Nevada. They're going to Florida, Texas, all the usual places. And I say, no, I think we're better off staying and fighting. And I say that for a variety of reasons, one of which just happens to be that I like it here. I like the weather. I like the people, generally speaking, unless you piss me off in traffic, then I hate your guts and want to do evil things to you and your parents. And I like the restaurants, I like the sports teams, I like the fun stuff that we have here. I'm much happier here than when I'm elsewhere. And people say, yeah, but there's too many headaches. If you like the restaurants and you like the weather and you like the people, well, there are interesting things elsewhere where you don't have the taxes, you don't have the regulation, you don't have the incompetent government, you don't have the restrictions on your freedom, you don't have all of those sorts of things. But let's be honest. If you like the amenities that are in California, you're probably not going to have too much fun in, I don't know, rural Mississippi. It just doesn't have what you're used to. And you experience this when you travel. Rural Mississippi, I'm sure, is a fine place. I don't want to live there. I don't want to live in North Dakota. I don't want to live in, I don't know, rural Oregon or wherever, fill in the blank. I don't have any interest in going there. I like all the stuff that California has to offer. So if you look at places that are similar to California, but not California, you're basically talking about New York, you're talking about Chicago, you're talking about places like that. And unfortunately, all the places that have restaurants similar to ours and sporting events similar to ours and fun stuff similar to ours have many of the same problems. In fact, they might be worse off than us. Look at Chicago, who used to have that gremlin elected as mayor, Lori Lightfoot. Do you remember her? She looked like something that dropped down from outer space. And she screwed everything up that she touched. Literally everything. And people said, all right, we got to kick her out of office. We need to replace her, and then things will go back to normal. And they replaced her all right. They replaced her with a socialist nut who has what, an 8% approval rating right now, and is the laughingstock of the country. New York City has an election coming up right now for mayor. And Eric Adams is universally despised by just about everyone in the Big Apple. So he's not going to win. The disgraced former governor who killed all the old people, Andrew Cuomo, has decided that he wants back in office, and he's running. And he has all the endorsements from all the big, bold-faced Democratic names from the establishment, people like Bill Clinton. And according to all the latest polls, he is in line to lose that election. And not only is he in line to lose that election, he's going to lose to a socialist. What's the guy's name, Randy?
Zohar Mamdani.
Okay, thank you for that. Randy can say it. I can't even get warm.
I should have just let you hang with that.
Oh, you want to watch me hack my way through that name?
The entire rest of this segment could have been you trying to pronounce his name.
Yeah. Well, guess what? I would have said a lot of things, and none of it would be correct. But he is another socialist candidate, and not a socialist like you're thinking. A socialist like what they taught you about in political science class. A traditional socialist, where the government owns the means of production. He wants, in New York City, the government to own the grocery stores. He wants the government to own the healthcare facilities. He wants the government to be like a traditional socialist government, like what you read about in the books. If he gets elected, that's what he says he's going to do, which means he's going to destroy that city. How those financial houses allowed this to happen is beyond my ability to comprehend. I know here Silicon Valley and the other big industries are willing to put up with a lot, but if you're Goldman Sachs or Merrill Lynch, how in the hell can you allow that to happen? But it looks like they're going to do it, which means those companies will be moving out of New York City. Where they go, I don't know. But the two things cannot coexist. And then you look at Los Angeles, and you look at Karen Bass, and you go, she looks a whole lot like Lori Lightfoot and Eric Adams, a Democratic politician running a big city in way over her head, failing in front of everyone. People want to get rid of her, but they don't know what to do. And you say to yourself, In Chicago, they replaced the incompetent mayor with someone far worse. And in New York, they're about ready to replace their incompetent Democratic mayor for something that's far worse. And then you look at Karen Bass. And let me tell you something. If Karen Bass gets replaced, the odds that Rick Caruso will replace her are very small, particularly since he has moved far to the left since the last election, and I don't see him generating any support at all from the right and minimal support among the center. The center basically voted for Bass, and I assume that'll happen again the next time around. If Karen Bass is going to lose, she's probably going to lose to someone like the socialist in Chicago or the socialist in New York. And in fact, there is a socialist candidate who looks like he's gearing up to run against her, and that's the city controller, Kenneth Mejia. We could end up with a situation where the three biggest cities in the United States are run by socialists. And if we don't end up with that scenario, the savior will be Karen Bass. We have a lot of options, and all of them are bad. If Karen Bass is going to lose re-election, she is no longer vulnerable from the right. Basically, by federalizing politics, which is what she did and which is what Newsom did, she solidified her position within the Democratic Party. And if she runs against someone to the right of her, she is going to frame it as a blue versus red, R versus D, Harris supporter versus Trump supporter. And in a heavily Democratic city like Los Angeles, that's all she wrote. If she gets attacked from the left, from someone who regards themselves as a socialist, who wants the government to own the means of production, then that's an alternative candidate who has real policy disagreements with her, who will also argue that she is incompetent. That socialist candidate would have all the wrong answers, but would be correct in saying that she is a failure as mayor. That puts them in a very dangerous position to win the election. Because the premise is right, the solutions are wrong. And there's nothing that Karen Bass can say that can make the public think that she was a successful mayor. She's not a successful mayor. She is a complete dope who fell flat on her face and did it in Africa at an inauguration. So we are in danger if we replace her and give her the punishment that she deserves, which is losing her job. We are in danger of replacing her with someone who might be a lot more competent than her and would be far more dangerous than her. If New York and Chicago are the ghosts of Christmas future, that's what could be in store for us. Now, there's a lot of time in between this election in New York and between what happened in Chicago and when L.A. voters will be going to the ballot box. We don't vote for another couple years. We vote in the midterm elections. So we could look at Chicago and the abysmal approval ratings over there, and we could see the candidate, should they be elected mayor in New York, the socialist candidate, and they fall on their face, and we could say, oh my God, we're not going to do that over here. But the way it works in politics is there's usually waves. There's usually cycles. Think about it. In the 1980s, it was right-of-center candidates that did really well. We had Ronald Reagan. The Brits had Margaret Thatcher. There was a conservative in Canada, conservative candidates. We had a conservative Pope, John Paul, where right-of-center people did well. And then after that crowd left, it was this new way, triangulation, centrist left candidates that swept the world, where you had Bill Clinton here, and you had Tony Blair in the UK, and you had Yitzhak Rabin in Israel, and you had the same consultants, Dick Morris and others, who were running races in all of these countries, Mitterrand in France, all over the globe, and they essentially packaged them the same way. And for whatever reason, globally, that brand of left-of-center politics is what sold. And then you have populism with Donald Trump, where Trump comes along and wins in 2016. And then we see Brexit. And then we see all of these other European countries. And in Argentina, we saw Argentina elect a populist president down there, the guy that looks like Roy Orbison. And all of those candidates did well. It was all in a cycle, all in a rash. And now in big cities in the United States, what you're seeing is the machine Democratic candidate failing. That worldview is not equipped to run a big city. Whenever you put those people in charge, they don't run the city well. We've seen it happen in all of the big cities and probably a number of other big cities that I'm not even mentioning. You have to be a strong personality. You have to have someone with a little bit of snow on the roof, someone who can fight the unions and the developers and politically be strong enough to survive that. We had that with Willie Brown when he was the mayor of San Francisco. We had that with Dick Reardon. We had that with Rudy Giuliani. You're familiar with those mayors, these strong personalities who can stand up to the powerful interests. Those people make great chief executives of big cities. These career politicians that have never run anything before in their lives, they get eaten alive, which is what we're seeing. But as what happened in Chicago and what looks like is going to happen in New York could come to Los Angeles too. That could be what happens here in the state of California. Does Karen Bass deserve to lose? Sure. But be careful who you replace her with. And just remember, it's going to be the same idiots that voted her in who get to vote to replace her. And if those idiots didn't learn their lesson and they're prepared to put the pedal to the metal and go in a worse direction at 900 miles an hour, then that's what all of us have to live with. So keep that in mind as you're thinking about dumping Karen Bass, and keep that in mind as you're thinking about the New York City election that's about to take place, where they also have the screwy ranked choice voting. So God knows what that's going to produce. And I would also caution you to think about Oakland, where they dumped Shang Tao, but then they replaced her with Barbara Lee.
And she's not nearly as fun.
Quite frankly.
It's too bad we can't dump the electorate. If we could dump the electorate, we could really solve a lot of the problems. Let's go to Clifton in Vallejo. Clifton, hello.
What's going on, John and Randy? Top of the day to you guys, man. I got something that's really been perturbing me and that's really been sticking in my craw, okay? And it's concerning the fast track situation up here in the Bay Area, okay? Now, me, I'm fortunate enough and blessed enough to have 4 cars, okay? I have 4 cars. Only 2 of my cars cross the bridge. My wife driving to Oakland to go to work, and my daughter, who works at NASA as a communications dispatcher. Okay, those are the only 2 cars that cross the bridge. But you still replenish me at a rate as if 4 of my cars are crossing the bridge. You understand what I'm saying?
It sounds like they're taking you to the cleaners.
Do you understand what I'm telling you, man? It's the most ridiculous thing I ever heard of in my life. 2 of my cars don't even cross the bridge. And 2 of them do. I can understand you replenishing the 2 cars that cross the bridge at whatever rate you want to do that with. You understand what I'm saying? But why would you want to replenish 4 cars when I only drive 2 across the bridge?
Did you call them?
Oh man, I'm about to do a class action lawsuit on this because this is ridiculous, bro. And that U.S. attorney that you had on a little bit earlier, I think he need to be informed about this because, man, look, Emeryville and that whole area right there is the most corrupt place in the Bay Area. Okay. There's so much mafia activity going on over there, so much just corrupt stuff that's ridiculous, man. You understand what I'm saying? And for them to be able to rob people like that, because I know I'm not the only one. Just imagine if you multiply that by how many people up here that live in the Bay Area.
All right. Thank you for the call, Clifton.
I love him.
We've got one more hour coming up on the John Phillips Show. Don't you go anywhere.
You understand what I'm saying?